I'm here to talk to you today about the metaverse, and obviously in the last couple of months, especially since Zuck rebranded Facebook to Meta, which I really wish I'd put money on, because I saw that coming a mile off. The metaverse as a term has become more and more prevalent, and for some it's just a buzz term, for some it is, the next big thing. So let's just start by making sure we understand what this term actually means and where it came from. So it was originally used by author Neil Stephenson in his book Snow Crash. Great book, by the way. Definitely deserves to be a movie. It was then recycled by Ernie Klein in Ready Player One, which some of you may have heard of, even if you haven't read the book, because Spielberg made the big blockbuster movie a few years ago. But essentially, it's this concept of a persistent virtual reality world where people can interact with each other in different ways. And tied in with that is the idea of it being interoperable, where people can move between connected spaces. So it isn't just any video game, and it isn't just any VR experience. I can have a VR training application that is specifically for soft skills in business, and it's a standalone application. My trainees load it up, they take the experience. That's not the metaverse. That's using the tool of virtual reality in a specific way. The metaverse is something slightly bigger. For a lot of people working in the VR industry over the last 5 years, it's kind of been this zenith. It's what they're all aiming for. And what we're seeing now is this convergence between the VR, spatial computing, immersive technology, XR, there's so many terms it just gets baffling, this crowd, and then over here there's been this other bubble of blockchain, and now NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and what's being dubbed Web3. And all of this is converging together, and metaverse has become the nebulous term that sums all of it up, where everything is heading. Now, I want to bust a couple of myths when it comes to the metaverse. Firstly, number one, you don't have to have a virtual reality headset to engage with the metaverse. In fact, a lot of platforms, almost all major VR platforms that are geared towards social multi-user VR experiences are device agnostic. They will work on a phone, they will work on your laptop, you'll be able to interact with them. It's not as immersive, but it opens the door. Companies are very conscious of the fact that we are almost running before we can walk in terms of headsets. I mean, that right there, that's a Vive Focus One. It was the first one in the country. The president of Vive sent it over to me, and it was useless. Okay? There was nothing I could do with it. I took it out into the desert. That was quite fun. But apart from that, it's basically sat on a shelf, and it's like a part of my little museum of headsets. The headsets aren't there yet in terms of mass adoption. It's going to take a little while. So what's happening is the platforms that the development teams are building, they're almost always designed to be device agnostic so that you can access them from, as I say, your phone. Secondly, this is not all just Zuckerberg, okay? What was very interesting for me, having moved quite heavily into the Web3 NFT space in the last year, was the uproar when he called his company Meta. All these teenagers who've made millions of dollars selling pictures of monkeys as NFTs, suddenly like, this is not our metaverse. This is not what we ordered. All I did was I tweeted a picture from a book. I'll reference it again at the end. It's the best book on VR, best book on all of this stuff, is a book by a good friend of mine, Jeremy Balanton. He's the founding director of the Virtual Human Interaction Lab at Stanford. And his book, Experience on Demand, is the seminal text on how VR, the metaverse, affects us as human beings. And it literally, the book starts with Zuckerberg about to walk a virtual plank. And this was 2013. This was when he started looking into this stuff, because he's that far ahead of the game. He had enough foresight to recognize that the evolution of computing from traditional computing to mobile computing to spatial computing and immersive technology, that this was, where he wanted to take his company. So this isn't all just because of him, and he is by no means the only company that is investing in this stuff. Everyone from Facebook and Amazon, Apple and Microsoft, the ones you'd expect are going down this rabbit hole. But then you've got Gucci, Dolce & Gabbana, literally this week, Dolce & Gabbana are launching stuff. McDonald's, Pepsi, Coke, every major company is looking into this stuff. The other myth is that this is just a bubble waiting to burst. There's definitely an element of bubble around the NFT side of things. The amount of money that's being thrown backwards and forwards is, quite frankly, bonkers. But this is the evolution of computing. And I've stood on many stages over the last 5 to 10 years saying this exact thing. Why is spatial computing the natural evolution of computing? It's quite simple. Because our world is 3D. So it makes sense for us to engage with stuff in 3D. If I want to look at a car, I don't want to have to go through a 2D interface to turn around a 3D model. I want to be able to walk around that car as if it was real, look inside it. This is the next evolution in terms of how we engage with digital content. So what I want to talk to you about today is how this could potentially impact and disrupt the travel industry. Now, I always throw this quote in pretty much every presentation that I do. This is from another good friend of mine, Professor Tom Furness. He's referred to as the grandfather of VR. Tom has been working with virtual reality and this kind of tech since the 60s. He's a professor at Washington University. I've had the honor to interview him more than once. The stories that he will tell, the stuff he was doing 30 or 40 years ago, will blow your mind. First time I interviewed him, inside VR, he talked for about 15 minutes, and then I turned to the audience and said, does anyone else feel like he's just come from the future? Because he was talking about doing stuff 30 years ago that most people don't know is possible today. And this is my all-time favorite quote about VR and the metaverse. In essence, being in a virtual world is like writing on the brain with permanent ink. Now, I've used that and leveraged that in the education sector for a number of years. And I've seen the data coming out of multiple universities that back this up. The fact that studies have shown how virtual reality can increase focus, how it can increase the retention of information, how it can lead to people applying the skills that they've learned more readily, more comfortably, and more fluently after using virtual reality in a learning experience. But that same logic and these same statistics do transpose to other industries, like the travel industry. If you're trying to make your customers remember an experience, remember a piece of marketing material that you're using to try and convince them to choose this rather than this, then it's worth bearing in mind that there is no medium that has come before that has the emotive power that VR has. So how can all this stuff be leveraged in your industry and is your industry? I will not pretend to stand on the stage here today as any sort of travel expert. I have just been to Sri Lanka and I'm quite proud of that. First trip since COVID, and I'm about to pop back to the UK for the first time in 2 years as well. There's numerous ways where it can be leveraged in the travel industry. Most importantly, we're talking about two things, inspiration and demonstration. And to a degree, you could argue that any form of media is used for that, whether it's a picture, a video, a carousel of slides, a testimonial. What we can do, though, as I said, is give them an emotive experience, a sense of being there. What's funny, I noticed 2 nights ago, my partner, she said to me that the one thing that she's missing the most from Sri Lanka isn't the view in the morning, it's waking up and before she's even opened her eyes, the sound of the jungle, because the hotel we stayed in was right in the heart of the jungle. Literally monkeys on the balconies and everything. It's also important to bear in mind that we are talking here about technology that is at a nascent stage and has a long way to go. And we are thinking about future-proofing your companies, future-proofing this industry, and thinking about a new type of customer, a younger type of customer. So I'm going to give you 3 examples of ways that I feel that this type of technology, the VR, and towards the idea, this as I say, this nebulous idea of the metaverse, how this can be leveraged in the travel industry. And they are stepping stones for you, folks. One's kind of easy, and a lot of people are doing it already, or some companies are starting to do it. Another one's going to come along probably in about 3 to 5 years, but people are starting to invest in it now. The more forward-thinking companies are starting to explore it now. And the other one's a little bit more, but it's going to happen. So we'll start with the easy one. We'll start with what some companies are already starting to do, which is using VR to showcase destinations. okay? Giving tourists a glimpse of a possible experience, putting them in the place that they're going to go. It's the evolution of that carousel. When I go on booking.com or somewhere like that, when I'm looking at a possible destination, one of the things I'm bound to do is pull up that carousel of pictures and click through these carousel of pictures. And if I'm lucky, there might be a little video clip there. But by harnessing virtual reality technology, whether we're talking simple 360 video footage or 3D content that's been built to recreate a digital twin of a location, whether that location is a city, a hotel, or a landmark, there are lots of options in terms of taking things to another level and immersing people in and giving them a taste of what they would like to expect. And as I've just alluded to, there are different levels to this. There are apps out there already that you can go and download and have a look at. Things like Wander or Google Earth, which are using Street View 360s and sewing them together to give you an experience of having been somewhere. Good friend of mine, Chris Madsen, long-time member of the VR industry, guy that was there at the birth of the Oculus, the original Oculus. I always remember in about 2016, Chris was due to fly to speak at a conference. He's American, and he was due to fly to speak at a conference in the Netherlands, in Holland. And as soon as he knew where the hotel that he was staying at was going to be, he loaded up Google Earth VR, dropped himself down on the street outside that hotel, started walking around. And he said to me when he got back, he said, by the time I got there, I felt like I'd already been. And I kind of knew where the hotel was in relation to the train station and where local shops and bars were. And I had that sense that I had an idea of my location and direction. You can take things further with 3D. Brink Traveler, builds 3D recreations of venues. That gives you a lot more versatility in terms of having people be able to move around different spaces. Or you could go the gamification route. National Geographic Explore, it has a couple of destinations, Machu Picchu, Antarctica, and allows you to, introduce people to a location, but adds that gamification element. There's another one called Rainforest Odyssey, which drops you into the rainforest with a camera, and you're challenged to locate some of the different types of insects and different animals and plant life that you can find in the rainforest. This is really inspirational stuff, and this is the sort of stuff that is increasingly being used in schools. This is becoming the normal for kids. They're getting used to this kind of stuff. And as I mentioned, there are companies doing this already. This is one, Cigic Travel. They have literally hundreds of virtual reality tour videos from different destinations around the world. I think, it's over 70 different destinations. And they've put together these playlists as part of their marketing where they are showcasing these destinations and different highlights from these destinations in immersive 360. And bearing in mind that, again, this is a nice entry-level point. 360 video will work on your phone. It will work on anything that's got a gyroscope. Don't have to have a headset. But if people have got a headset, they can take it that step further. There's a company called Travelport VR. I believe they're based in the States. And they're working with all kinds of travel operators to build this content for them. So if you want branded specific content for specific destinations that your company works with, these guys might be somebody that you would hunt down and try and start a conversation with. Second step, travel agents in the metaverse. And as I mentioned, this is becoming increasingly popular in the last year. The idea of building in the metaverse, in these connected worlds, the Sandbox, the Decentraland, Somnium Space. Everybody from Nike to Adidas to McDonald's, they're buying these parcels of lands as NFTs and building stores and malls and shops inside the metaverse. Now, this is very forward-thinking, but the idea is that you've got another vertical here. You've got a virtual space where people can walk in. If they're wandering around inside these virtual worlds, they can walk in and they can, inquire about a hotel. Inquire about a destination. I'd like to go to Sri Lanka. Okay, let me show you a little bit about Sri Lanka. Suddenly the walls disappear and then you're surrounded by Sri Lanka. You can do that from inside this persistent virtual hub. You know, it's like having a billboard for forever, a billboard that isn't just catching people that happen to drive past it, it's a billboard that can catch people from all over the world. Kathy's a great person. She's worked for Vive and all kinds of big VR companies. I believe she's working for Forbes right now, but I haven't spoken to her for a while. She says, in the metaverse, everyone is a world builder, including brands. And you know, you guys are representing your own brands. Everyone's going to have a stake in the metaverse. Everyone's eventually going to have land and shops and, you know, a place to reach customers in the metaverse. So the question becomes, well, do we have to do this now? No, you don't have to. There's 3 reasons I give you why you probably should. Number 1, we are talking about a whole new world. We're talking about a generation of kids that have grown up on Fortnite and Roblox and Minecraft, and they're in this. They are in this 100%. This is, to them, this is natural. This is what's coming, and they want this. Number 2, location, location, location. The land next to a Nike or a Snoop Dogg or someone else who's bought a parcel of land. You can see some of the bigger ones here, people like The Walking Dead and Atari. It's just a partial screenshot. You know, the land next to those guys costs more because you're going to get more traffic coming past when people are visiting a Nike. So getting in now can actually be very beneficial. If you got in a year ago, you could have bought some of these parcels of land for 10 to 20 times less than they sell for now. And if I told you how much some of these parcels of land sold for, some of you would probably start throwing stuff at me. But there are still opportunities. And again, the earlier you get in, the more choice you're going to have. And finally, I've kind of done these in the reverse order here. This does take time. It's not like, you know, throwing out an image on TikTok or Twitter or Instagram. If you're going to build a whole virtual world, it is going to take you a little bit of time. And there are, you know, huge projects that are already underway, including Metaverse Dubai. You know, a virtual Dubai is already being developed. And Dubai, the UAE, they're not the only country doing this. We're going to see a lot of these digital twins. Finally, I'm going to throw the crazy idea out at you. This is probably 5 to 10 to 15 years away. But it is coming, guarantee you. Holidays in the metaverse. So suddenly, I've got options. Do I go to France for a couple of days, or do I go to ancient Rome? Do I go to Hobbiton from Lord of the Rings and hang out with the hobbits and Gandalf? Do I go to the Kingdom of Atlantis this week, or do I go to Spain? As ridiculous as this might sound, this is a distinct possibility. Okay? The idea of virtual trips to impossible places, to Mars, to Atlantis, to the past, to the future. These are not going to replace in real life travel, in real life tourism. People are not going to stop taking real trips, but they will start to supplement the in real life travel with crazy stuff like this, with beluga whales flying around in the sky of Mars. This is my favorite quote about innovation. I've done a lot of work investigating, exploring the concept of innovation over the last few years. Jamie Notter's definition is my favorite. Innovation is change that unlocks new value. This is change that unlocks new value. It unlocks so much new value. It is opening up a whole new world in the way that we engage with digital content. And you can sit on it. You can wait. Or you can future-proof yourself. You can think ahead to the next generation of customers, and you can act on it now. If you're looking for 2 books that I particularly recommend to you to get your head around this stuff a lot more. 2 books by 2 guys called Jeremy, but they're different guys. Both lovely guys. Jeremy Balinson, I mentioned before, from Stanford, single best book on VR and how it affects us as human beings. But my good friend Jeremy Dalton from PwC in the UK published this book a couple of years ago, about 18 months ago, and this is specifically about how to harness immersive tech like VR within a business. Both excellent, both readily available on sites like Amazon or in the shops. And with that, guys, I will leave you. Hopefully, as I say, half of you are terrified and half of you are inspired. Thank you so much for your time.